is officially open with the first pick, with the second pick, with the 32nd pick. The Detroit Lions select, the Jacksonville Jaguars select, the Carolina Panthers select, the Green Bay Packers select Jordan Love.
Oh my God! Come on! I cannot believe it.
One of the best times to draft a quarterback is when you don't need one.
Why didn't you get a wide receiver in a wide receiver-rich draft?
Packers window is closed.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Talking Sports with Evan, NFL Draft Talk. I'm Evan with Taliesin. Took a week off last week for reasons, but we're back this week, and I got special guest here tonight, Emlyn Thomas, joining me, and I appreciate you coming on to talk some NFL draft. And you kind of have an interesting insight to give as you were there at the NFL draft when it was in Chicago.
I was. It was the first time they'd done it outside of the New York market in quite some years, and it was. I think the NFL had realized what a thing they have now, and they've tried to make it into a fan experience. There were some hits with it. It was a really cool experience. We got good weather in Chicago, which is always important for an outside event. Chicago has tried to get more events in this downtown area with mixed results. You close off streets, it creates traffic problems more than we normally have. But it was at the Roosevelt Auditorium, which is right off Michigan Avenue. And then they had some parks, and we had streets closed. For me, it was an absolute blast because I love all things with the draft. I remember sitting in front of the TV with a box of Wheat Thins and a thing of Merck's cheese and the Pro Football Weekly, going through it with Mel Kiper Jr. years and years and years ago when you didn't have the screen and the scrolls and everything that we have now. So for me, it was cool to see it live and to see a lot of sort of the celebrities of the draft. They had set up a big stage area where they were announcing picks. And when those were going on, before that, they were taking questions from the fans, and there was interaction, and you were able to tweet questions to them. And curiously enough, they pronounced my first name correctly and managed to butcher my last name. How do you mess up Thomas? Yeah. He called me Emlyn Tomlinson. But in his defense, the announcer was on stage with LaDainian Tomlinson, so maybe he thought we were related. I don't know.
Yeah, he was probably focused on trying to get your first name right.
And he nailed it, and then boom, screwed up the easy one, missed the layup. But it was cool. I mean, and there's a lot of. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen in Green Bay because the Packers have already started to make that area around it sort of fan friendly and have some activities. They had the electronic timing for the 40-yard dash. They had blocking sleds. I've got a great picture of me somewhere of myself in an Oakland Raiders at the time T-shirt with a bevy of Raiderettes that were there. So there was a lot of fan stuff that was really cool. My wife was my girlfriend at the time. She came down, and I kind of knew she was a keeper when she nudged me, and she pointed and she said, "Hey, is that Mel Kiper Jr. over there?" And I knew, oh, okay, she's kind of into it too. But it's the selection process for me has always been fascinating, and to make it a fan-friendly event. And I think the next year, I believe it was, they went down to Nashville the second year, and closing off Lower Broadway had to have just been a blast. The pictures and the video that I saw from that, it just looked like all the things that they didn't get right in Chicago, they managed to get right there. So I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic one up in Green Bay.
And we'll get more to your experience as a fan there in a minute here, but just to let viewers know, the Talking Sports with Evan weekly show you can find on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can find on YouTube, Talking Sports with Evan, on Facebook, Talking Sports with Evan, or on X at Evan with Sports. Appreciate the support of those that are watching this NFL Draft series that exclusive to YouTube. So make sure you hit subscribe, and hey, you'll never miss an episode. I'm going to do a show weekly all the way up to the NFL Draft, which I plan on being in Green Bay for it. I don't really know what I'm going to be doing yet in regards to creating content, but I definitely will be there. So, Emlyn, you talked about being there in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Emlyn,
it's an outfit. Yeah, Emlyn Tomlinson. Yeah, I mean, I don't have as many touchdowns in a season as he did, but
I guess a little bit about the setup. Can you just kind of go more into detail of that looks like? Because I know you got the stage where the picks are selected. You obviously have the guys on the phones down.
there were multiple areas of it. Now, the ticketed thing was inside the Roosevelt Auditorium, which is an older theater in Chicago, kind of historic. So that was one area of it. But even if you weren't in that area, and that was packed, even if you weren't in that, they had closed off Michigan Avenue, which is a major thoroughfare. There's a lot of traffic that goes up and down. Anybody that's gone shopping in Chicago has hit Michigan Avenue. They had closed that off, and then they had set up other things. So the tented area where they were interacting with fans via Twitter at the time, now X, but they had set up a huge stage there, and there was an opportunity for fans to get in that area. And then there was a bunch of fan activities around it where there were things that you could interact with, and they made it into a really cool situation. Fortunately, the weather was great, which April in Chicago is a little bit iffy at times, but it was a beautiful day out. There were fans everywhere. It was just, and once Chicago gets something like this, it's not just the people that live in Chicago, but it's the people that live in the suburbs surrounding Chicago. Chicago's a very easy city to come from the suburbs downtown and get around without having to drive into the city. So you had people taking Metro in, coming into the city, and then just really, it was a very joyous experience, and it was the first time that they had done something like this. So people were just thrilled with it.
So I'm reading about trying to get ready to be there in Green Bay, and you mentioned tickets. Mm-hmm. It seems like, I don't know, I want to necessarily say free event, but it seems like it's kind of a free event to be at. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I didn't buy any tickets. We just went down. We didn't get into where the auditorium is because well, I don't know if that was a first come first serve or if it was get tickets in advance. My schedule lightened up. It was a Thursday. It was gorgeous. We went down, saw the first round, and partly I'm okay going on a Thursday because I didn't want to be there on the weekend when everybody's going to be in town and it's just going to be a mob scene and you've got everybody off work and they're coming down and I don't do well with mobs of people. But there was a lot of stuff going on, and there was just a lot of activity, and there was a lot of fun stuff that even if you were, I could see taking 6, 7, 8-year-old kids down there and they'd have a good time. I think there was stuff for teenagers. There was a lot of activity, and everybody was in a really good mood. This was kind of a different era in Chicago. It was pre-COVID. It felt very safe downtown. There was a strong organizational presence. There were police where there needed to be. There was security where they needed to be. And it wasn't an overwhelming situation where at any point I felt like, oh goodness, there's too many people here, or it's not a safe. It was great. It was a well-regulated, well-run. There were a couple of things that they changed, I think, in future years when they went to Tennessee or they went to Kansas City or Las Vegas. But yeah, and Philly too. Yeah, so you live and you learn it, and Chicago has started that with what's going on at Wrigley Field. The area around Wrigley is now becoming much more fan-centric, and there's opportunity to go and do stuff during game day situations where it's becoming a lot more like what the Red Sox have when they close off streets and there's just foot traffic and people are out, and there's a palpable energy and a buzz when it's going on, and it was cool to see the picks coming in.
Well, this year it's in Green Bay, and I just put the map up on the screen on the projected how it's going to look. You look to the Packer Pro Shop area, for those familiar with Lambeau Field layout. That'll be to the bottom left of Lambeau. The stage is kind of adjacent to that over by the Resch and the Hudson Center is what they're looking to do. And then you talked about Wrigley Field area being built up to the right of Lambeau Field. That's the whole Titletown district, which you have the sledding hill, the 40-yard dash thing you're talking about. They have one of those there. So like Lambeau Field, they've really built up quite a bit too, thanks to Bob Harlan had the vision, got it started, and Mark Murphy's done a great job building off of that. And what are your thoughts on it being in Green Bay, Wisconsin, the smallest city in the NFL, and it's going to be hosted at Lambeau Field? What are your thoughts, Dave?
I think it's totally cool. And this is the one thing that I think makes the NFL a better league than any other league is that Green Bay, if it was in Major League Baseball, wouldn't survive. If it was in basketball, wouldn't survive. But you have this, with the way their revenue sharing is set up and the salary cap and all that stuff, fans are fans. And Green Bay's had a great, I mean, it's a 100-year-old franchise, and they've had a great run, and they've got an opportunity to really show off now the improvements they've made over the last few years in building up that Titletown situation. And what a great experience for the fans, and what a great way for the NFL to give back. And as cool as it used to be when it was at the New York Marriott Marquis, it's even cooler when you get the fans involved. And talk about revenue for the city of Green Bay. Holy cow. This is just another newfound day of let you park on my front lawn and give me $20, and it's another mortgage payment coming right off.
I think 20 might be a little low, though, what they're probably going to be charging. I know I've seen bars as far away as Walsall, Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Appleton, all offering shuttles to Green Bay for it. My brother lives in Kimberly, which is just south of Green Bay, and I guess I should probably clear it with him first. I haven't asked him about it in quite a while, so maybe, hey, Sean, if you're watching, I plan on staying up by you for a couple days. But I was planning on staying there and finding a spot to park and walk to the stadium from general area where I park when I've gone to the game the past couple of years with a friend of mine, Scott, from who I used to work with, who has season tickets. Probably going to try to park in that general area. But hey, I'm ready for the zoo. And like I said, I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I'm definitely ready for it. And this is basically what Bob Harlan, when he decided that Lambeau had to be a year-round to go to, like, I'm not saying he was envisioning the draft coming there, because obviously it was at Radio City Music Hall the whole time he was president, but it's events like this he was envisioning.
Yeah, and it's going to have a big economic impact on the state. I saw the Osthoff Resort, and I saw some hotels in the Dells that are advertising packages with shuttles to it, which kind of makes sense. And you think about, if you're a Packers fan and you live out of state, to be able to come in, stay at a hotel, have a weekend, do your thing, and then be able to get to and from where it's going without having to park, without having to drive in, that's a great thing. I think Green Bay's set up for it. I remember going a few years ago, they had the Ryder Cup was in Kohler, Wisconsin, at the golf course there, and that event overwhelmed the infrastructure of roadways and parking and being able to move people for that area. Sheboygan County just wasn't ready for it, and probably will never be able to host one again because they couldn't get people through the way that they needed to. Green Bay does this possibly 9, 10, 11, 12 times a year. So I think they're better set up and prepared for exactly what they're going to get.
That region is used to big events. Every summer, Oshkosh has the FAA AirVenture, which brings probably about as many, if not more, people that you're going to have at the NFL draft in Green Bay. You have people from all over the world showing up in Oshkosh for that event. So and
they have parking there too with a shuttle going. I saw that.
Yeah, that region definitely knows how to hold big events, and I'm sure Green Bay's taken a lot of pages out of their playbook on how to best utilize it. Hey, I'm excited for it. I plan on going up there, plan on checking it out, and it'll be my first time going to the draft. I was close to making the trek to Chicago for it, but things came up that I couldn't get down there. But I already got my time off request in for work. I had that in about January. As soon as my PTO kicked in for the year, boom, that was submitted.
Set and ready to go. Yeah, this should be a great event for the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, so moving on more specifically prospect-wise. We just had the NFL Combine wrap up. Started technically Wednesday if you want to consider specialist. I know Pat McAfee, he was hosting his show live from the draft, and the background you saw the kickers and the punters kicking. But so technically Wednesday kicked off. But the NFL Combine kicked off, and it's kind of turned into a more of a media event than an actual like scouting players or putting people through drills. I guess what's your overall thought of the Combine this year?
Well, with the Combine, and I think all of it for me, it's the start of the season really. that we get started with this. This is going to be an interesting draft. The combine, you listen to people talk about it, and people that know way more than I would ever think that I could know about it, but they keep saying the same things over and over again. It's not a deep first round. It's not a deep first round. And I've heard a rumor that I've seen twice now that Gutekunst has gone to Mark Murphy and said, hey, listen, there's a political issue, I'm sure, with this. But he said, are you okay if I trade out of the first round? And there may be a situation. The Packers only have 7 picks in this draft. I know he would like more. And from what everybody is saying is that third round, that fourth round, that fifth round, those middle rounds that can be so important to building your roster, there's a lot of depth there. And it's not like the Packers need a ton of people to come in and be starters right away. So you're looking for some depth pieces. You're looking for some offset pieces where you can offset some salaries by bringing in somebody that's inexpensive. So to me, this combine has been interesting. I think there are some players that have helped themselves tremendously. There's some shockers. I was looking at Cam Scatabo, who I think is an interesting prospect as a running back. And I think the Packers need a backup running back, because as good as Josh Jacobs is, he gets a little nicked up, and you've got some problems with running the game plan that Matt LaFleur wants to run offensively. So I think it's time to invest in a drafted running back that can be inexpensive but can be there. Scadabo's a pounder. He's measured, I think, 5'9.5", 220 pounds, but he had a 39.5 vertical. He didn't run the 40, but his explosiveness in the vertical and the broad jump, he was second with the vertical leap. And that just shows you how explosive he is and how much fast twitch muscle and how quick he can be getting out there. But I was disappointed that the top 2 draft picks for quarterbacks didn't throw. I think they're kind of taking the Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders are taking the thing like they're anointed at this point. And truthfully, if they came out in another year, I don't know that they would have been drafted in the first round in a lot of drafts.
I don't really have a big problem with Sanders not throwing and Ward. They don't really have anything to gain to me. There are going to be top 5, top 10 picks more than likely. They're going to necessarily hurt their draft stock more than help. You look at Will Howard, Ohio State quarterback, who had to throw because he started the draft. His throws looked off the mark. His throws looked eighth. His throws didn't look very good. But the thing is, he's throwing against wide receivers he's never thrown to before.
Right.
So they don't have that timing down. They don't, as I think Shedeur Sanders said it best here, and I'm not a big Shedeur fan here, so don't think I'm pounding my chest for him, is that not every receiver runs the routes the same way. Like, you have a 5-yard dig. This is, every receiver is going to run it slightly different. And the quarterback so Aaron Rodgers, for example, knew exactly where Jordy Nelson was going to be, exactly where he was going to be when he threw that ball. And he knew Jordy Nelson was going to be there. When you go with receivers that you've never thrown to before, that could throw off timing. And I don't have an issue with Sanders not throwing, as again, all he's going to do is hurt his stock if he throws and his throws look a little bit off. But it's the cocky attitude that there's been reports he's come across, this kind of a full of himself attitude per Tom McShay. That's the part where I think he's going to end up hurting himself.
I'd like to see the competitiveness, I guess. I agree with you that they don't have a lot to prove. To me, Sanders, the question I keep coming back to with him is he's not exceptional at anything. He's an average athlete. He's an average arm. You keep coming back to it, and you match him up against the quarterbacks that went in the first round last year, and he comes up suspect. I think we're going to have something that we've not had happen, barring trade situations. I think we're going to have a situation that we had back in 2005, which I'm sure you remember well. There were 2 quarterbacks that were vying for the first pick overall. One got picked by the Niners, and then the other one just kept dropping. I think there's a chance of that, because if I'm drafting a quarterback and I'm looking at the group and I see Sanders and I see Quinn Evers, or I see Jackson Dart, or I see some of these other guys, there may be quarterbacks drafted in the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round that end up being better than Sanders is 2 years, 3 years down the road. Somebody put it really well with him in particular. It's like, how do you feel about him now? And how do you feel about him 5 years from now? Yes, he could probably come in. He's been running a pro-style offense. His dad was in the pros, obviously. His offensive coordinator was at the NFL level for a long time as both an OC, a quarterback's coach, and a head coach, and Pat Shurmur. But is he going to be a guy you give that second contract to? Or are you going to be in the same situation, Cleveland doing Cleveland or the Jets doing the Jets, where 5 years from now or 4 years from now, you're starting this process all over again?
Well, it might not even be 5 years from now if you look at the whole like Zach Wilson, Sam Darnold type timeline. But I think Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, if this wasn't this year's draft, if it was last year, for example, they're not being taken in the first round. I don't believe so. I think they have potential to be NFL starting quarterbacks. I think Cam Ward is more ready to start if he had 2-day run than Shedeur. But the best outcome for both of them would be getting with the team that has an established veteran, like try to think of a team that might have a quarterback who might be hanging it up soon.
I'll tell you one that I think will be drafted that will actually do well. Dylan Gabriel. I think he's going to go in like the 5th round. And if I'm the guy sitting in the room down in South Beach making the pick, he's a left-handed quarterback with a gun for an arm. I'm picking him to back up Tua.
Yeah,
Miami needs a backup quarterback.
They need a backup quarterback. He's a lefty like Tua, so you don't really have to reconfigure your offensive line much. You already have it in place. This is a draft that seems to be extremely, and I guess we're switching from combine to the draft class as a whole. Defensive line looks incredible.
Yeah, there's some depth there are certain positions where you go, ooh, this is a good year to be drafting a defensive lineman. Maybe not a great year to be drafting a wide receiver at the top of it. Although you had some guys run some exceptional times.
Yeah, I think with pre-combine, I think there were 2 wide receivers that were being mocked in round 1, which I think would be probably the lowest that the first round have had wide receiver-wise for quite some time. But there's a lot of 2nd, 3rd, 4th round wide receivers based off watching them in college and seeing them at the combine. There's some explosive athletes in the draft this year. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there'll be some sleepers. I think there's some guys that are going to be drafted that maybe aren't the top one. I mean, everybody's gone into this saying that Ashton Genty is the top pick at a running back. And boy, Hampton from North Carolina came out, and he's performed exceptionally well at this combine. And I think he's done himself a lot of good, a lot of good with this combine, that he's going to walk out of it and somebody's going to pick him. And I heard it, saw it today with Mel Kiper was talking about him possibly in as high as the 12th pick to the Dallas Cowboys.
What's your take on Travis Hunter? He's corner wide receiver, played 100% of the snaps in college on both sides of the ball, great playmaker, doesn't probably do anything great per se at either position, but great athlete, good competitor, and he seems to be one of these guys that just has an outright good head on his shoulder. He kind of got bunched together with the Shedeur Sanders, his brother, Dion, some of the more lively personalities at Colorado, but he's a guy that I guess, where do you best see him in the pros, or you think he's going to get the opportunity to both ways a lot?
I think he'll be I don't think he'll be a full-time starter both ways. I think he'll be a package guy on one side of the ball, and I think that's going to be the evaluation for a lot of teams. Packers would not look at him as a wide receiver because he's too small. If you look at all the wide receivers the Packers have drafted, nobody's under 200 pounds. And he scares me that he is so thin and so frail that he might not be much more than 185 pounds. If he's going to have to get up, I don't think he's a corner. I think he's gifted. I think he could play it. I just don't think he's big enough. So is he a nickel corner? I think he ends up at wide receiver, and he plays the nickel corner on occasion for people, or vice versa. He plays corner. If somebody thinks he can play out wide, great. And then you put him into a situation where he's essentially a third down, third receiver kind of situation.
When you look at this draft class, first round wise, do you have a prospect that you're just like, I love this guy? Like, do you have a a guy of the draft that you're just extremely high on right now?
Boy, after watching the combine, not really. I don't see anybody there's nobody like last year. Brock Bowers was just, I mean, and I guess part of it, let me back up, is when I look at those first like 10 picks, certainly the first 5, I'm not looking for a good player. I'm not looking for a great player. I'm looking for a gold jacket player, somebody that you can plug in at a key position for 10 years. And when he retires 5 years later, they're crafting a bust in Canton. I don't see a lot of those guys that you say, woo, Cam Ward doesn't say that to me. Sanders doesn't say that to me. Will Compton, good tackle prospect, but he's got short arms. So there's a lot of dings on some things of those elite sort of, wow, this guy's going to, you're going to plug him in and we're just going to forget about that. I remember back in the Al Davis, Ron Wolf sort of thought process of building your team was when you're picking that high, the picks that you want in the first round are going to come down to a couple of positions. Quarterback, Packers don't need one. The Packers don't even need a backup, really, with as well as Malik played last year. You're looking at a tackle, left tackle principally, an edge rusher, or a corner. So are there guys out there that are Travis Hunter gifted, unique, unicorn? I don't know. And I think it's interesting that people are talking about him as the number 1 pick. And I don't know that Tennessee stays there. I think they may have to, when we get done playing quarterback musical chairs, and Matt Stafford was the first domino to fall there. When it's all said and done, does somebody like the Jets or the Giants make a move to get up to number 1 and Tennessee trade back and live with their quarterback for another year? And then if they have to pick a quarterback up in a draft, you're doing it next year.
So there's a couple guys for the Packers that I really like that if they happen to be on the board when the Packers picked, I would definitely be completely fine. So I think you nailed it. Edge position, Packers need to address. I think offensive line, I think Rasheed Walker's done enough to at least get another year there starting. So maybe second, third, fourth round. Plus you still got Jordan Morgan, who essentially showed potential, showed promise in limited action, but obviously shoulder injury caught up. But corner, defensive line, first round wise, I think are the 2 areas they need to look. And because the Packers now do a 4-3, I'm bunching edge and tackles together when I say defensive line. But I think Johnson out of Michigan, I'm a big fan of him. He's currently 11th on Daniel Jeremiah's big board. And another player that I was extremely impressed with, both in his drills and then the on-field work, is a defensive tackle from Oregon, and Derek Harmon. He's a big guy. I think he's like 6'4", 3D between 320 and 330. He just looked very good moving around on the field. There was a lot of guys with the defensive line group that were slipping a lot when they were trying to cut on the brand new turf that they put down in Indy prior to the combine. He didn't slip at all, and he looked very good going through his drills.
Yeah, and there's guys that I know you're doing the same thing I am. You're automatically discounting them for the Packers. Mason Graham out of Michigan, the defensive tackle. Kid's a beast. I mean, he's just a monster. He's not going to be there.
I think he'll be top 10, top 15 pick. So.
Yeah, he may very well be top 5. I mean, so you got him out the edge rusher, Abdul Carter out of Penn State. Even though he's got a knee situation, it'll be healed up. He's not going to be there for the Packers. There may be somebody they fall in love with that may drop.
You could cross Shamar Stewart off the Packers list too. He's going to go top 5 after his performance.
And I think for the Packers, by the way, this is the first draft that this late in the year, every team currently still holds their number 1 pick. It's the first time it's happened. I know since the merger, I think it was 1947 was the last time that this has happened. So you have everybody with their original pick. I think the Packers are playing a waiting game. Is there somebody that's going to drop? And they're at what, 22 right now? 23. So is there somebody at 15 that we really like this kid? Does a Will Compton drop for some reason? Everybody gets scared off by his short arms. And he drops, and you go, okay, if we move up to 15, we can get it. If we move up to 14, is it worth that? Or are they looking at it going, the guy we get at 23, we could probably get a very similar person. We got 5 guys we still like. We can get somebody at 34 or 40 and trade back and pick up some more capital, whether it be a number 1 for next year or add to the mere 7 picks that they have this year.
What I would like to see the Packers do, and I know it's not usually the Packers style, but the Packers, they have 7 picks currently. Mm-hmm. They're going to have potentially compensatory picks coming too. I'm not sure how many because you obviously signed McKinney, you signed Jacobs, so you lose 2 there. I think you probably get 1 or 2 coming. I want to see the Packers trade that first-round pick. And again, pipe dream, probably not going to happen, but trade that first-round pick for – well, I know they're not going to get Max Crosby, but for like a Max Crosby or a Myles Garrett, like make that type of splash move, because if you trade back and you accumulate 3, 4, 5 more draft picks, your team needs to get any younger, and you don't have the roster space for 10 draft picks. And
true, I agree.
I think free agency, they're going to make some moves. I'm not saying big money splash, but they're going to make some moves. But I wouldn't be opposed if they made a move to try to get a already established player with that first-round pick. And I know DK Metcalf's name got thrown around. I wouldn't give up a first-round pick for DK Metcalf, but I would definitely give up a second or a third for Metcalf.
I'd give up Jair Alexander for Metcalf.
You have to give draft capital in there too.
Yeah,
you're going to have.
You're going to have to at some point. But yeah, I think. Well, and really, when you look at it, what do you see as the big needs for the Packers? Corner, edge rusher,
D tackle,
a true wide receiver that could take the top off of defense. Somebody that's just an absolute.
You were thought Watson until November, and he's that guy for you.
Yeah, and I think Watson, he may be at a career crossroads. The guy just can't stay healthy. And the only other pick on offense I would be looking at, I think they need a backup running back, but that's a 3rd, 4th, 5th round situation. The other one, I think, the other big question for me is the right tackle spot. Are you going to leave Zach Tom there? Because I've heard it said many times, he's a Pro Bowl player at right tackle. He's an all-pro at right guard. And I've heard it said from a couple of different people, his best position is in the middle of that line snapping the ball. He is a Hall of Fame potential player. And your center, who has been the weakest of the 5, is a free agent now. Do you move Zach Tom in if a tackle, or does the kid from last year produce and then you slot somebody and you get a swing tackle in the draft and get yourself deeper there?
Yeah, I think the position, and the Packers aren't typically ones to draft position need. They do take best value, but they also tend to draft with future in mind. So first round edge, D-line in general. I think Kenny Clark had a bad year. TJ Slate's a free agent. Other guys at the D-tackle spot have shown flashes, but nothing consistent. Big thing is the Packers need consistency. They need guys who are consistently going to produce down after down after down. Not, well, we made a play this down, 4 plays in a row. We didn't really do anything, but this now play we did. That's what they need. They need guys that are consistent. So Jordan Love needs to be more consistent. Jaden Reed needs to be more consistent. Wicks needs to be more consistent. Lucas Van Ness, Rashawn Gary, they need to be more consistent. That's ultimately what they need. They also need a player in the draft that's going to be consistent in what they bring you. You know, Quay Walker, great athlete, has shown flashes of very high-quality football, but he's also shown flashes of very bad football. So the thing is maybe this is the year Goody doesn't look so hard at his what he looks for, relative athletic score, measurements, things like that. Maybe you take somebody that produced more in the college and try to pencil them in. But I think defensive back, edge are probably areas you would look at first round. Right guard, Sean Ryan's a free agent. Morgan's probably more of a tackle. Rasheed Walker is going to be a free agent after this season. Maybe look offensive line later in the draft. Wide receiver, Roman Dobbs, Christian Watson are in the last year of their contracts. Jaden Reed and Dontavion Wicks are in. They have 2 years left, so maybe they look there. And then linebacker is a position, not that you're going to do first or second round, but linebacker is pretty thin right now outside of Cooper. You do have Walker, you have McDuffie, you have Hooper from last year, but you can definitely improve in that area.
Yeah, McDuffie, I think, re-signed today, correct?
He
Was
just
that announced?
Weird deal. But he's not, to me, he's not a full-time starter. He's a spot starter when Quay or Edger and Cooper need are hurt, pretty much. He's not a full-time starter.
Yeah, I think your point about consistency, one of the guys that I really like, and I think he's prepped himself well, is Will Johnson out of Michigan, a corner. But he's been hurt a lot. And I think that's a risky situation, that guys that get dinged up in college that much, for the Packers, and let's be honest, their medical staff is very conservative. When they will pull guys out more so, I think, than a lot of other teams will. Probably a good thing, but at the same token, you need guys that are going to be out there week after week. What you're talking about, that consistency of, I can just pencil somebody in and I can forget about it. I mean, Stokes was up and down as when he was in the defensive backfield. And who knows what's going on inside Jair Alexander's head. I mean, that's just a mystery for everybody to figure out. So, yeah, I think it's get somebody. I think they'll probably be looking at kids coming out from big schools that have played against big competition. The first round, if they stay there, I think where they're at is a tough spot to have somebody drop. So it's either move up to get what you want or move back to get more picks. And maybe you're right. Maybe this is the year they go and get something. I wouldn't be surprised either. Myles Garrett is tempting. I mean, I heard it was available and I saw the stuff and I went, well, is he one of those guys that he's been around for a long time? Is he primed for a drop off? Is he going to have a JJ Watt kind of situation where he's great and then you're starting to see the fall off and you're on the hook paying him? His stats are just ridiculous. Is it time to have him? Is he your Reggie White now? Is you bring him in and that is enough where it's just, man, now that offensive coordinator has got a scheme for this guy, and that frees up everybody else to play one-on-one.
Yeah, and the difference with him and Watt is J.J. Watt, even in his prime, had a hard time staying on the field. Myles Garrett, so he played 17 games in 2021, 16 in 2022, 16 in 2023, 17 in 2024. He did play 10 games in 2019, but hey, we all know what happened in 2019. He decided to play whack-a-mole with a helmet, so he got suspended games there. So, but I would be fine with Myles Garrett. I know there's some salary complications you got to work on, and the Browns are. I think his dead cap would basically wipe out their entire salary cap if they were to move him. But I don't know. I'm excited for the draft, and it should be a good time, huh?
Yeah, and boy, you mentioned Cleveland. They're sitting at the number 2 spot, and you talk about somebody who should write a book on how not to run an NFL franchise. I mean, they're going to be paying $100 million to a guy who's not going to play quarterback for them, and even when he did over the last couple of years, has been absolutely horrific in Deshaun Watson. So there's a lot of, and you look, I think there's now 9 quarterbacks that are free agents that have all been starters, regular starters that are going to be free agents this year.
Yeah.
Packers don't need any of that. And I'm curious to see having Tom Clements, who I think was a really well-regarded quarterbacks coach, retire, and having a new voice in that room. I think going back over the tape from last year, I think there's a decided difference in the way that Matt LaFleur calls a game for his backup quarterback and his starter. When Willis is in, he calls a different game. And I got to be honest, it's beautiful to watch his play calling. And I don't know why he changes it when Jordan Love is in there, because they're essentially the same type of quarterback. I don't get it.
Jordan Love's issue this season is he just wasn't healthy. He had the knee injury week 1, the groin injury after that. I don't think he ever fully recovered from the knee injury. And then you get the groin injury after that. So I think you're limited on what you can do with Jordan Love. Jordan Love, his first year as a starter, used his legs quite a bit, moved around the pocket and scrambled a bunch. This year, he barely used his legs at all. So I'm curious to see what a full, healthy season of Jordan Love we get. Do we see more of the second half of his first year starting, or do we see more like the up and down last year? That's going to be the ultimate question there. The other thing with Willis is they you could tell they had him. I don't know if handcuffs is the right word, but they simplified quite a bit with him in regards to basically made things very basic with him because his weakness coming out in college, his weakness in Tennessee, can't throw to his left. So they put situations to best maximize his strengths, and I think that's what what LaFleur needs to do with Love going into 2025 is just maximize his strengths.
Yes, and there's a point too, I think, where the internal self-scouting. I remember a story some years back of the glory days of the San Francisco 49ers with Bill Walsh. There was a one particular play that when they did their analysis, Joe Montana, a Hall of Fame quarterback, threw 5 interceptions on the same play. It was one play call, and he thought he could make that throw, and every time they ran the play and he threw the ball, he threw an interception. And they finally just said, we're ripping this out of the playbook. It's gone. You can't run this play anymore. And he's like, no, I like that play. It just didn't work. So I think LaFleur's got to start doing, and now he's got a new quarterbacks coach. He's also got Luke Getsy coming back, which I think will help him because before he went to Chicago, he's a pretty well-regarded member of their staff. Bringing him back as a senior offensive assistant might give them some more voices that keep LaFleur into a situation where he's putting them in the right spots.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you coming on. The NFL draft is next month in Green Bay, Wisconsin. You truly never know what the weather's going to be. We can have a foot of snow on the ground for the draft end of April. You just never know. But I appreciate you coming on. I look forward to talking more about the draft with you in the future off air and try to get you on back on as we get closer to the draft.
Absolutely.
Give
one rumor that I heard out of the draft today that is Packers related. The Pittsburgh Steelers are playing a game in Dublin, Ireland. And there are a couple of different people that are posting rumors that the Packers are going to be the opponent, and it may be week 3 of the season. Don't know if that's true or not, but the scuttlebutt is that that's going to happen. So thank you very much.
I've heard the Packers Ireland rumors. I just didn't hear week 3 yet. So I guess that's kind of being newer. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on and spending some time with me today.
Thank you for having me. This is great. I think this is a great year for the Packers, and getting rid of some of the salary cap things they've had in the past frees up some more money. The cap's up to $22 million. They got a young team, and how exciting is it to have the draft occurring in Titletown, USA?
Well, this has been Talking Sports with Evan, NFL Draft Talk. Find this video and all the other ones at YouTube, Talking Sports with Evan, and find the live show anywhere you get your podcast, as well on YouTube, Talking Sports with Evan, X at Evan with Sports, and on Facebook, Talking Sports with Evan. Talk to you all next week.